Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a good evening it is. Well, here we are on Broadway, and what a night for a world premiere. Looking up and down Broadway as I can from this slightly elevated platform, all that I can say is it's a great night, and I hope you're going to stay with us for quite a long time because it'll be an even greater night as it wears on. We're going to present some of the most famous people of the film industry, legitimate stage, the social set, and as we present them to you along with our account of this thrilling world premiere of Warner Brothers' East of Eden, I'm sure you're going to have an evening of real enjoyment. All of the proceeds of tonight's showing go to the Actors Studio. That's a training school whose alumni list reads like who's who of film, land, and theater. These wonderful and very glamorous people have paid $50 for orchestra seats. I'm sure they're anxious to get inside and see East of Eden.
East of Eden is one of Steinbeck's most important books. It was about his family. It's about the Cain and Abel story, fathers and sons, and how they dealt with the heritage of good and evil. Steinbeck was writing out part of his own story and his own anxieties about being his father and the own anxieties about what would happen to his sons. Steinbeck's relationship with his father, I think, was also complex. All the years, his teenage years, from about 11 to 18, when he went away to college, I think he felt ashamed of his father. His father was struggling financially, and I think that pain became much of his own and his sense of his childhood as feeling like an outsider.
Also, it's a cautionary tale. At least the book was. That's why it's dedicated to my brother and myself. My father loved cautionary tales. He thought you could save a lot of problems for humans if you could basically lay out someone in a similar situation. That's what storytelling was for. I once knew a guy, and he's actually talking about you, and you can sort of come to decisions based upon what happens to people in these kinds of stories. That's how I think my father thought that literature was functional.
Look who just stepped out of a car. Mr. and Mrs. Milton Berle. Well, my goodness, more pulchritude here tonight than I've seen in a long time. Milton?
Hello, Martin.
Ruth,
How are you?
How have you been?
Oh, fine.
I don't have to ask you how you enjoyed Florida. It's pretty obvious.
It is obvious. Doesn't she look good? I enjoyed it, too. I got burned at the $10 window.
Oh, that's not so good. That's the kind of a sunburn that doesn't stay with you so
Well,
long.
I want to tell you, these lights here tonight can really give you a sunburn. I've never seen so many people on board. This is the first time I ever had a streetcar be a straight man for me with these noises. But I want you to know, and I will say this on behalf of Ruth. Doesn't she look beautiful, huh?
She's gorgeous.
Always.
I know. Even in front of the cabana at the pool at the Roney Plaza.
That I'm sure that this is going to be a sensational success again because of the great work that John Steinbeck has, great works that he's written, such as Grapes of Wrath and Cannery Row. And I was just talking to Elia Kazan out there, the director of this wonderful picture, and I said to him, how's the picture? And he said, well, you better go in and see it yourself. The last time he said that to Ruth and me, we were going in to see On the Waterfront.
Yeah.
And it was quite a sensation.
Quite a
and I know this is going to be wonderful. Martin, it's very good to see you.
Thank you very much for coming up to our camera and our microphone. Ruth, nice seeing you again.
Bless you, and bye.
Thank you very much.
Steinbeck said, at some point I want to write a story of my valley. I need to write a story of my home place, the Salinas Valley. Salinas is a kind of metaphor, I think, for life itself and for what he was doing in the book.
Salinas is a character, as is Monterey, where Kathy basically finds her new refuge. It takes a long time to get from Salinas to Monterey in those days. It was a train. It was a big deal. Culturally, it's just as different as it is today. Monterey is the artistic end, and, Salinas is the agricultural end, and one's Democrat and one's Republican, and, just on and on and on. I don't think my father ever held a great deal of nostalgia for the Salinas of everyone else. There was his Salinas, but it's not a very attractive Salinas. It's a small town with small town views.
He felt like there were all these, what he later called Salinas fat cats, and he saw himself as separate from that. So he was a kind of moody, dark young man, and that's captured in Cal.
He saw the failings of his characters mimicked in the failings of the environment they grew up in. I think basically pretty much the same thing.
After Steinbeck's divorce from his second wife, Gwen, in 1948, he was absolutely devastated because he had loved her with the same love that Adam feels for Kathy. And indeed, there's much of Gwen in the Kathy Kate character. And I think that Adam's love for her, his disappointment with what happens to her, his inability to really come to terms with his sons and know quite what to do with his sons. There's a lot of that, of Steinbeck in there.
And now on our camera with us, we're very proud and happy to have Mr. John Steinbeck, the author of this wonderful picture that's premiering here tonight. John, I suppose you're excited.
Yes, I'm excited.
Are you always excited?
I'm excited even by openings that aren't my own.
Well, I know what you mean exactly. There's something very romantic about an opening, isn't there?
Something very terrifying, too.
Yes, but I think with real talent, I don't think it's quite as terrifying as it is romantic, because it's leading perhaps to something even greater in their career. And who can tell but that this picture may be a great stepping stone for some of the wonderful talent in it.
I think that's nonsense. I think the real tragedy would be if you had an opening without talent. Tonight we have talent.
We have talent. We have both, so we'll be very thankful. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. Well, ladies and gentlemen, cameras. You have never seen so many cameras in your life. We have a television camera here, but it's lost. Well, how do you do, sir? And
it's
all
a
I can say,
wonderful crowd, isn't
it
it?
is. Will you turn around, Elia, please? Right around to our camera up here on this platform, because we have with us, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elia Kazan, who produced and directed East of Eden. And when you see it, you'll know what a fabulously wonderful job he's done. And we're very proud to have him here, because right about now, I understand that there's a lot of consideration for a certain picture of yours as far as Oscars are concerned.
Which picture's that?
A little thing called Waterfront.
Is this actually going on the air, Mark?
Yes, indeed, this is going on the air.
Glad to have it. It's a wonderful crowd, isn't it?
It is indeed.
God almighty.
And incidentally, may I just say that I know that if this follows in the usual Kazan pattern, it's going to be a great picture. I haven't seen it yet, but I certainly want to get inside. And
God, I hope I'm not following a pattern now, but I think it's a pretty fair picture. I think most people will like it.
Such a pattern we should all follow.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much for being on our camera this evening. Get rid of that coat. It's very warm.
My father didn't believe in absolute evil or absolute good, period. He believed that our awareness of these things created the identities we set up for them. Steinbeck's really aware that without that, or at least our personal concepts of good and evil, it makes for a lousy reading.
One of the things he wanted readers to do was to see that we have evil in ourselves. We're capable of things we don't even want to admit we're capable of.
Whereas the original book has several major fulcrums. Kazan could only allow himself one, and Adbra is it. She's the center. I mean, she's the one that gives our audience the idea that there's a better way.
You don't see this much in a film, but her family is tainted. Her father has been, reprehensible in some ways. And so she has to confront the nature of evil. And that makes her obviously a better partner for Cal, but also more compassionate, more understanding. Compassion is very important in the book. Compassion can really help somebody like Cal change. He's sort of on the edge, and Adbra pulls him over to the other side.
Every generation has to relearn these lessons again and again about forgiveness and about compassion and about looking for love that's not there. Why isn't it there? Why am I the only one left out?
Ray Massey, besides representing that generalization, the stern, traditional Christian culture, if you will, he also represented something to Elia Kazan. I mean, that is to say, his own father. Now, his own father was quite a different figure in the sense that he was a Greek immigrant, but he was stern, he was unforgiving, he was not very understanding of his son's needs and so forth. He and Kazan had a huge struggle over just Kazan going to college because the old man wanted to come in the rug business with him. And I suppose you could say that the conflict that he and the James Dean character, Cal, get into is a version of the conflict that Kazan had acted out with his own father.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, talent steps on stage. Mr. Raymond Massey.
Hello, Martin.
So nice for you to visit us.
Well, it's a wonderful privilege for me, Martin. I haven't seen this picture, and I'll never see Rush's, but I know the script was good, and I know that I've been directed by the greatest, one of them all. Mm-hmm. So
what have you got to lose?
Well, I still think he probably saw me through. I'm very proud to be part of it.
Are you nervous? Are you anxious?
I'm terrified, naturally, but I really have a great faith and a great, great admiration for Gaj Kazan, who I think is the best motion picture director and stage director living today.
Well, that's quite a recommendation, and I'm sure that your work in the picture is going to bear out what you've said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Raymond Massey.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, a little feminine pulchritude, Eva Marie Saint.
Well.
And good evening. You're one of the usherettes tonight, huh?
Yes, for the Actors Studio.
And do you think we're going to have a packed house?
Oh, yes. My goodness. What a love. It must be this way in Hollywood.
It is this way. You've been there to premieres, haven't you?
No.
Haven't never seen a premiere out there?
No.
Well, they have all
here.
the lights just as we have here, and all the crowds and all the excitement.
But it feels like Los Angeles weather, doesn't it?
It is.
Beautiful.
It's 61 or something like that today. And I think Mother Nature is really helping us with our premiere this evening.
It's just wonderful.
I know you do have to get inside. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to take one more look. You look right up there at the camera. Well, you had a very beautiful little lady. And we're so happy to have had Eva Marie Saint with us on our show.
It's going to be a great night.
He didn't want at any time be an intimidating factor in this, and this always pretty much happens for a well-known author. I mean, even his presence on the set implies criticism. And in many cases, that's a very unsuccessful type of relationship. My father would much rather wait for you down at the bar. He would bend over backwards to help if he thought that director was going in the right direction. And obviously, all of his life, he thought that Kazan was going in the right direction. They seemed to share a lot of very, very sympathetic visions of things. They found it very easy to work together.
They were lifelong friends. And among the first people to read The Galley of the East of Eden was Kazan. Kazan took it to Jack Warner at Warner Brothers. And he says in his autobiography, it's the easiest sale I ever made. I went in, Jack Warner says, what do you want to do? He said, I want to do this East of Eden. And Warner just says, you got it. So let's go to lunch.
Paul Osborn, who wrote the screenplay, said to me, you ought to go to the theater and look at that fellow playing some sort of an Arab. And I saw him. I mean, I didn't think much of him. I called him into the Warner Brother office, and he came there, and he just sat there looking rather surly and unresponsive.
You know, the kid was awful. I mean, you know, he sort of looked like an unmade bed, and he was inarticulate.
Then he finally said to me, do you want to ride on my bike? So I said, yeah, I'll take a ride on your bike. So I got in the back of his bike, and he went around the city in the goddamn bike, and I wish I'd never met him. But as I got to talking to him more and more and more, I said, this guy's it. And I called Steinbeck up. I said, I'll tell you, I found a guy that may not be a great actor, but he is it. I said, is that important? He says, if he's it, send him up. So I sent him up to John, and John said, I don't like the guy, but he's it. He said, he's the guy.
When Steinbeck said he's perfect for the part, I think part of his body movements is kind of, the kind of awkwardness, his slouching, his, dark looks, his very inarticulateness. I think that really conveys that brooding quality.
He was cast in The Immoralists. They did all their rehearsals. They were trying out in Philadelphia. And what nobody knew was that Kazan had his eye on Jimmy and wanted to get him out of The Immoralists, but it was opening. And they did a screen test. And Kazan decided that he would commit to Jimmy. On opening night in New York, Jimmy gave his notice, which means he had 2 weeks in the play and then was free to do East of Eden.
Action. You think it's pretty?
Yes. It's very pretty, Cal. I had been one of the first actors that were taken into the actor studio in New York City, and I met Mr. Kazan there. So we worked together on a play that the actor studio actually did. I was about 28, I guess, and Jimmy was 4 or 5 years younger. And they wanted to see if I looked too old for him.
You know what? I doubt if Dad even knows that today's his birthday.
He probably doesn't. But I guess I didn't, because I got the part and we did the movie.
I had another great performance in that thing from Jo Van Fleet. People have forgotten about Jo Van Fleet, and she's neglected now, but she was a great actress.
And then you throw Raymond Massey in this mix, who looked down his nose at virtually everybody. Anybody he hadn't done rep with was not worth doing it.
Ray Massey's performance is very stiff, very unyielding, very moralistic, very stern. But that was Ray. I mean, he was in life. I mean, I knew him. He was a stiff. And he had, off-screen in particular, just a terrible relationship with Jimmy Dean. He would be upsetting to Ray's sense of decorum.
He was always cutting in on his lines, saying the wrong lines.
And Ray would go to Elia, and he'd say, Gadge, as we called him Gadge. And he'd say, you've got to stop this young man.
Massey had learned the script exactly. And he would say to me, he's not saying the lines. I say, all right, I'll get him to say the lines. And then I'd let Jimmy, I was tricky. I'd let Jimmy do it the way he wanted because it irritated him. Then I'd photograph it.
He was always inventing. It was never the same. You didn't know what was coming. So you had to listen, you had to watch, you had to really be there. And I can't think of acting as saying, well, you didn't say that before, why don't you do it the same way? No, I think that's not acting, that's imitating or something. It's not being, because nobody ever does the same thing twice. I mean, in acting, we have to say the same words twice, but we don't have to say them the same way. We don't have to say them in the same rhythm.
He really compresses the amount of frustration and loss and anger and, you know, that kind of thing you feel when you're 16, 17 years old. Everybody's betrayed me. And then doing this Richard III thing. Well, if they're going to call me a villain, I'm going to be a big villain, you know, overreacting and everything. In this constant squirming search to be accepted by the one person that you love most in the world.
Gradually, I got a terrific respect for Jimmy because of his talent. He is a tremendously talented guy and would do anything to be good. He was way open. Do you think I would do anything to stop that antagonism? No, I increased it because it was the central thing that I photographed. But what I photographed was their relationship to each other, the absolute hatred that Ray Massey felt for Jimmy Dean and the hatred Jimmy Dean felt for Ray Massey. That's precious, man. You can't get that. No director can get that. You hopefully arouse it. Do you get me? You're essentially awakening something that's there by some tactic or other, some means or other, by some hint or other, by some stimulus or other.
He said, you know, directors are desperate people. He said, we will get what we need by hook or by crook somehow.
Here, Colonel Warner, Colonel Jack Warner, ladies and gentlemen.
Work for us out at KFWB in Hollywood, aren't you the fellow?
Yes,
Martin
sir.
Block?
I took a little of your money,
Yeah,
Mr.
you're a chip
Warner.
off the old block of the new block.
Yes, and I have a couple of chips of my own who are looking in out here tonight. Michael and Petey and Joe.
My tie all right, because my wife is looking in. I don't want to look like the
tie looks
best-dressed man
very
in town.
good, and I suppose it's a old shoe to you, shall I say?
Yeah, well, old shoe with a new heel or something like that, or with a new sole.
Milton Berle, I thought, had gone inside, but I see that Mr. Warner also can give out with a bit of this comedy.
Are we on now?
We are certainly on television and radio.
Good. I'm glad to hear we're on both. Now, I'm very happy to be here, and I want to pay much tribute to Eli Kazan, Paul Osborn, John Steinbeck, Jimmy Dean, Miss Harris, and the entire cast, Ray Massey, a young chap named Davalos, and I'm sure the public's going to enjoy this film.
I'm sure they will. In fact, they're all here tonight, I think. Have you ever seen such a crowd?
No, not
Street just packed and jammed. Well, thank you very much, Colonel Jack Warner.
Thank you.
Mr. Kazan was very, very easy to work with and very stimulating. He absolutely adored actors because, of course, he had been an actor himself. And he was so exciting to be with. And he got everybody excited about what they were doing.
Kazan told me, see that fort over there? It was Monday morning. We're going to shoot Friday. I want you here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I want you to learn everything about that fort. Drive it over around the lot, work out how to crank it. I knew everything about that Model T. He didn't direct that way, just do this, let's do that. He wanted to find out what made the actor tick.
I always remember the last day of shooting, and I didn't know, I guess at that time, whether I was going to go to the cast party, so I was looking for him to say goodbye. And I went up to his trailer, and I knocked on the door and said, Jimmy, I didn't hear anything. I knocked again, and then I heard sort of muffled cries, and then I knocked harder, and he came to the door. The tears were streaming down his face, and he said, it's the last day, it's over. And it was so moving that he was so affected that this was his first movie, and it was so important to him, and now it was gone. Like, we are such things, such stuff as dreams are made on. It's true. The actor takes on this persona, and now it's not there anymore. It's gone.
Kazan was something special. And if you were growing up and taking an interest in the theatrical arts in the 50s in this country, you had to come to Kazan. I mean, he was just an important guy in terms of forming sensibilities in that era.
Long after their association in film, they enjoyed each other's company and talked about writing and were involved with each other for a long period of time. They were always planning stuff. They were like kids. I think it was larger than just association of a writer and, quote unquote, he's a director for a couple of films. They had one thing in common. My father's favorite line, I remember I had asked him many years ago, he said, what is the purpose of being a writer? And my father said, to reconnect humans to their own humanity. Their memory of compassion, their memory of pain, their memory of things that they forget. And I always thought that was a brilliant description of what these guys were doing.